Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MassCUE 2021 workshop, 5 questions, Unstick Us in STEM, SEL, and staff meetings, a free online and offline tool with Ella, Ben-Ur, and me. We're really excited to be with you today and share about this tool. In the chat, please share who you are, where you're from, and questions you ask people to get unstuck. Little people or big people, little problems or big problems. So my name is Manjula Karemcheti, and I'm the Director of Equity and Student Support at the High Meadows Graduate School of Teaching and Learning that was created in partnership with MIT. Prior to that, I worked as a K-12 school counseling administrator in Lexington and Malden. My work has always been grounded in equity advocacy for marginalized populations and dismantling systems of oppression in schools and communities. Here you can see my people that I design my life around. My kids, my dog, my extended family, the teacher candidates that I work with, and my newly learned skills in terms of Zoom teaching.
Hi, I'm Ella Ben-Ur. These are my people. For 13 years, I worked at IDEO, which is an organization that helps all kinds of other organizations do and make things better, as a designer, leader, and coach for teams like this one that was working with an airplane company. I've spent as long teaching and coaching teams at Olin College, like the one in the upper right. The bulk of my time is spent working with educators and others to help themselves and others get unstuck. And I'm a parent, so I have no shortage of opportunities to practice getting myself and others unstuck too. We'll get to those 5 questions in a minute, but the first and foremost is who's involved, or our people. So that's why we've started there. I've gotten to team up with experts in practices from design to leadership and communication, to learning and reflection, to science and startup culture, and lots of everyday challenge busters, both grown-ups and kids, all in search of some common language that gets us unstuck. We found that, in their own words, these practices all remind us to find new possibilities in how we see, first, who's involved in this challenge, or our people, and with and for each of them, what's happening and why, both upsides and downsides, say our observations. What matters most, or our principles in this situation? What ways are there for this to work, or our ideas for this challenge? And what's a step to try, a small experiment to test our observations, principles, and ideas? So we can again see what's happening. If it's great, great. And if not, maybe we see something else that matters, or a different idea. Different processes and people explore these in different ways. A lot, like scientific method and design thinking, iterate in this sequence, which is why the numbers go this way. But it's really a compass, not a map. It's how we see any topic, from past and present to future, and from details to big picture. Naming it, say our Innovators Compass, helps us use these powerful views we have more often, in any way that helps us get unstuck and make things better. So you can go the numbered way through all the questions, or go in a different order, like starting with principles or ideas, or bounce around or just use them in conversation. To make it easy to ask these questions anytime, there are lots of different formats online that have been used from preschools to the US Conference on AIDS. And a lot of these have been proposed by teachers. You'll find widescreen backgrounds that you can use online for slides, Jamboard, Miro, Mural, Padlets, whatever you're using. And there's also a free online app. Manjula and I used this one together to plan a workshop for the South by Southwest EDU conference in 2019. Today, we're keeping our presentations short so we can go to the interactive time sooner and use this tool together. All we ask is that you share back your experiences by email or tweet, because those stories on the hashtag and website are what really move this mission work forward.
I'm really so honored to be here today to share some of my experiences with the Innovators Compass. And I will tell you, it was hard to pick just a few. The use of design thinking and the 5 questions has helped me to support various groups and moving forward in proactive and productive ways, from students to community organizations to my current teacher candidates. So first, I'd like to tell you about some of the work that I've done with students and coaching teachers at the same time. So we had a situation where students weren't really following a cell phone policy that was established in the classroom. Some of the students needed their cell phones because they had responsibilities before and after school, had responsibilities to siblings, and needed to be in touch. The teacher wasn't really enforcing the cell phone policy either. Some of the kids were randomly getting into trouble and some were not for the same violations of the cell phone policy. And it was really creating a negative classroom culture. So what we did is we compassed the current cell phone policy with our students, and we were able to think about what was happening with the current cell phone policy, what really mattered most in regards to the cell phone policy. And it was really the learning in the classroom and the connection to the classroom and being able to pay attention to the content. And then we were able to talk about a variety of different ideas to support what the students needed in terms of access to their phones, but also what the teacher needed in terms of being able to provide the content and the learning opportunities to keep students moving forward. And based on that, a few experiments were tried in regards to a new cell phone policy that was co-designed with students and teachers. And really what that led to was students not getting into trouble on a regular basis, the teacher not having to stop teaching to enforce the previous cell phone policy. And also students became accountable to each other and corrected each other in terms of when they were using their phone appropriately in class and when they weren't. So it was a great design experience for the teacher, for the students, and for me in terms of figuring out what really mattered and what worked. Another example is during my college counseling work, I was giving a presentation to caregivers regarding how to support their students in post-secondary planning. And we used the compass to help caregivers consider their current knowledge and understanding of the post-secondary process, but also thinking about in their observations of what their child already had in terms of skills, strengths, what their challenges were, and any knowledge and observations they had about their child's social emotional development. Caregivers were then asked to reflect on what really mattered most to them in regards to their child's future. And let me just say that attending a name brand school has yet to appear on anyone's list in terms of what matters most about post-secondary education, college, and career. But things like financial independence, learning skills, connection, and happiness were in the what matters most category. From there, we were able to figure out ways in which parents could really support their children through the college search, application, and decision-making process. And caregivers were able to come up with small things to do to actually start implementing that support. I've also used the compass as an education and community leader with teams. I use it at the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Committee that I chair for the Massachusetts School Counselors Association. The compass was used to unpack the current landscape of diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racist knowledge, programs, policies, and procedures. What was in place and where the gaps were. The next step was to figure out what really mattered and what was at the heart of taking on DEI and anti-racism work. Once we figured that out, the brainstorming ensued and then came up with 3 actionable and measurable goals to pursue: professional development for counselors, advocacy for youth voice, and creating a virtual library of DEI and anti-racist resources. As a teacher educator, the compass is used with our graduate students on a daily basis. In clinical debrief, we use the compass for our teacher candidates to understand the various observations and interactions that happen during student teaching with individual students, with peer dynamics, to consider why a lesson went a certain way, and pretty much everything else that happens in a classroom and in a school. Teacher candidates collaborate with their peers to understand what happened, why it happened, and what to do next to improve, grow, and promote student success. There are a few different examples of our graduate students using the compass. One of the examples is a graduate student thinking about math practice. One is around how to get students to participate more in breakout groups in a physics class. And another is what to do when students are insulting each other and just not treating each other well in classroom culture. And our graduate students are able to go through this process and really come up with ways to move forward and improve their teaching and also improve the student experience.
Now I'll share some more stories from STEM to SEL to staff meetings starting elementary school. This second grade class at High Tech High North Country Elementary in California observed a STEM challenge at their doorstep. Caterpillars trying to cross the street. They decided this matters to them and came up with ideas from paper airplanes and catapults to stop signs and just ran with some of those experiments. I couldn't resist this one, but since this is MassCUE, I'll showcase Massachusetts schools now. At a Brookline school, a teacher got tired of everyone complaining to him about each other after recess. So he invited the entire class to look at their playground culture. They shared their observations on stickies, social things like they always play tag, some kids feel excluded and sad, and practical things like people stand at the bottom of the slide and block it. He wrote down principles they shared: fun, being safe, free choice, people listen, being included, agreeing on our rules. Then they all drew out some ideas for new games, rules, props, and signs. They tried them at recess, saw what happened, and made some adjustments. In middle school, this wonderful MassCUE educator, you may know, has offered the compass to her students as a way to navigate any of the challenges that are holding them back in school. Like this one here, feeling sad because they're lost in classes because the teachers are going too fast for me. And her quote, "That time your student walked you through the 5 questions of the Innovators Compass, which they met a mere 2 weeks ago, as if it was the back of their hand, and then walked you through the 5 questions to decimate a stuck moment. High five, tools for life." That's the why of this work. Now I'll skip up to high school stories. Students in this Cambridge app making class use these questions to consider who they were designing for, what's happening and matters for them, explore ideas for their apps, and build and try those out with some real users. In this team's case, little kids. Then gather new observations, principles, and ideas, and make their app better. The same teacher also gave students a little time to tackle something on their mind on their own. This student took on her stress about grades, and in particular, a math test coming up. The teacher followed up on their personal experiments the next week. Of course, we teach more than STEM. This teacher at Neshoba Regional High does a STEM and English mashup. She invites her students to understand book characters, what's happening, what matters most for them, come up with more ideas for how the character could handle the situation, and actually try those out and discuss what might happen. She's found her students develop skills to relate more deeply to characters and to real people. So that bleeds into SEL. So she extended her invitation to making their own experiences in her class better. In groups tackling shared challenges they experienced during the time block. The students offered their observations, principles, and ideas. On the left is being tired, and on the right is being hungry. They worked with their teachers to propose small first experiments, like these different ways to break up long block to tackle hunger, fatigue, and restlessness. Notice the iCompass and Jamboard edtech mashup here. Anyway, they tried different iterations. Finally, they reflected on the experience together. The teacher learned not just that a break makes students more productive and eliminated challenging student behaviors, but more about what matters to students, and that when you give students a voice, they commit and own their work. As for the student observations, my favorite was a fun way to make change. Of course, COVID is the ultimate challenge, and another class in the school pulled a compass out early. This is February 26th, 2020, to explore this challenge both for students and the businesses around them. And finally, we promised staff meetings. I'll share just one story also from the Neshoba High School. They took on their to-tackle list in a staff meeting with compasses and groups. And here are some staff reflections. Fosters freedom of thought, action, productivity, collaboration, and speaking up. So again, this tool has been used from preschools to global conferences. And since we are here together in a conference, let's use it to advance equitable education in these volatile, often virtual times. using technology or otherwise. In a minute, I'll give everyone an iCompass.me link so we can make a compass like this together. Now, every one of the compass tools has the same instructions on top. With and for everyone involved, explore new possibilities. So we're going to want to get creative in how we look at both the challenge and how we could approach it. And of course, everyone involved isn't here. And so we can use question marks as freely as possible to recognize when we don't really know what's happening for people or what matters for them. And that's actually the most powerful thing we can ever put on a compass is actually a question mark. First, it'll ask you to put your name in one word, how you'd like it to appear to others. I'd put Ella, but you could put whatever you want. That'll bring you to a blank compass. I've already added the topic, advancing equitable education, and some people involved, just a few groups to keep this simple for now. We'll go one question at a time in the numbered order. We'll explore each question in 2 steps. First, we'll give you a minute to quietly make stickies. Just double-click on the compass to make stickies and save them in draft mode. So all the stickies will be invisible. No showing your stickies. Then we'll unmute one person at a time to publish and just read one sticky. That's it. Let's go to the Q&A and also open this link. We'll paste the link in the Q&A chat for you to copy.